John is a senior fellow at the Bonner Center and professor emeritus at Virginia Commonwealth University. For the past 40 years, he's focused his research, teaching, board work, volunteerism, public speaking engagements, and public scholarship on promoting social justice in the Richmond region, first as a professor of urban studies at VCU, and then as the senior fellow at the Bonner Center. Over the past 8 years as a senior fellow, he has penned dozens of pieces on poverty alleviation, regional cooperation, racial equality. He has served tirelessly on Mayor Jones's Anti-Poverty Commission, and he has logged hundreds of hours preparing the research and presentation on the 2010 census, analyzing it and putting it into a digestible form so that he can share it with groups ranging from the board of the Community Foundation to students at local universities and high schools to churches and more. So he's taken that complicated information, as he's done with all of the data I've seen him work with. He takes complicated data, he breaks it down, and he tells us what it means for social justice and for the daily lives of the people who live in the Richmond region. In collaboration with VCIC and Hope in the Cities, John's research and presentation, Unpacking the Census, has been captured on video, and other facilitators across the state and region can now use it to teach others about the persistent, historically based, structural inequality that continues to cause violence to our social, cultural, and economic health in Richmond. Over the past year, he has put his time and talents toward gathering and analyzing and mapping data on the spread of poverty into Chesterfield and Henrico counties. John's research and presentations have spurred important county conversations about economic inequality and the impact of poverty on schools, housing, transportation, and opportunity. If that isn't the work of a peacemaker, I don't know what is. Let's welcome John and congratulate him.
Okay? Cheryl, that was a lovely introduction. I'm honored by what you said, and I'm deeply touched by your gracious welcome. I wish I were the person you described. And I'm far from it, as Sharon and my two sons would attest. Moreover, what I've done that led to this recognition really wouldn't have happened without the constant support, patience, lots of it, the good humor, but most important, the love of the three dearest people in my life. I wish our two sons could be here. One is in Atlanta and one lives in Switzerland. One morning, several weeks ago, when I opened my email for the day, there was a message from Adria asking if I had some time that day to please call, since she had some news she wanted to share. Honestly, this is the truth. The first thing that came to mind was that she and Thad were moving. And I was thinking, please don't tell me that. We can't lose either one of you. Did Thad get tapped by Harvard or UC Berkeley or my alma mater, Texas Tech? Or did Adria accept a position with the National Social Justice Organization? My other thought was that Adria wanted me to serve on an RPEC committee since she knows how much I love committee work. In fact, as many of you know, one of the main reasons that I retired from VCU after over 3 decades at the university was so I could devote more time to committees. A more likely reason for Adria wanting to talk to me was to thank Sharon and me for our contribution to RPEC and ask if we would double it for next year. Well, obviously, the only way to find out what was on her mind was to call. And when I did, I really wasn't prepared for what she told me. I had been selected as the RPEC 2015 Peacemaker of the Year. And I was really stunned. Peacemaker of the Year? Given all that I had done and said to tick people off, particularly people in high places, a more appropriate award would be Troublemaker. And that I could accept generally with a clear conscience. I've been in the audience, this is true, I've been in the audience during 2 public forums, back to back each year, when the same high-ranking county official lamented the awful job we do welcoming new corporate executives to Richmond, illustrating it by citing one speaker at a program for new business leaders who proceeded to talk about racial conflict and the lack of cooperation between the city and the counties. I'm quoting, "Can you imagine," he said, "having someone like that speak at a program for new business leaders?" I felt like standing up and shouting, "I'm the guy he's talking about, and I love Richmond." I've made a good target for editorial writers. About a year and a half ago, the Richmond Times-Dispatch editor, responding to a commentary I'd written in support of Medicaid expansion, said that I live in La La Land. I'm not making this stuff up. I wrote a letter in response, and to his credit, the editor published it. Among other things, I said, "Going to La La Land isn't so bad, given where others have told me to go." On still another occasion, a state legislator blocked me from testifying at a public hearing, though I had arrived early to register my intent to speak and was at the top of the speaker list. Back in 1982, when Rutledge Dennis and I wrote our book about the 1970 Richmond-Chesterfield annexation, we seriously considered taking out liability insurance should the good old boys who ran Richmond those days decide to sue us for slander. That's the truth. We did join the AAUP, the American Association of University Professors, should we need assistance. Yet, despite our defensive actions, we were meticulous in our documentation. We got permission to record interviews with every single person identified as one of the city's or Chesterfield's most influential leaders during the 1960s. We cited the court record of pivotal secret meetings leading up to the annexation, including where a small group of Richmond's corporate and political leaders met, working in concert with their allies at the highest levels of state government, and how they orchestrated the reduction of the capital city's black population by annexing close to 50,000 white residents from Chesterfield County. Rutledge and I were confident about 2 things. First of all, the facts. Second, we were confident that we would never be asked to join the Commonwealth Club or the Country Club of Virginia. Our only question is whether we'd be confronted directly or whether they would pressure our employer, VCU, to fix the problem, or simply ignore us as they often did with insignificant pests. It was the latter. Yet I continued to speak and write, and finally, fed up, one West End member of the City Council called the VCU president and urged him to remove me from a university-sponsored panel discussion about politics and race. The president refused, but several years later, the same VCU president grew so angry with the Department of Urban Studies and Planning, which I helped organize, that he would have abolished it if he could have. What ignited his fury was that the department went public in opposing VCU's plans to extend the campus into Oregon Hill. Word got back that the president, in a conversation with the provost, questioned whether the university needed an urban studies department. I thought it was our finest hour. About the same time, I chaired the Richmond Human Relations Commission when, upon hearing accounts of racial discrimination in the Richmond Department of Public Works, the commission launched an investigation and found that the allegations were true. A report was prepared and released to the public, which embarrassed City Hall and angered the white members of City Council. Their unhappiness, however, was directed at the Human Relations Commission, not the city manager or the Public Works Department. And when my dear friend Ed Peoples, who's sitting right there in the middle, I see you, Ed, hello, my dear friend, when Ed succeeded me as chair of the Human Relations Commission, there were more investigations of discriminatory practices in city agencies. And as the commission grew stronger, it drew more opposition. And Ed and I joke to this day that we did such a good job leading the commission that it was ultimately abolished. It no longer exists, does it, Ed? By now you're probably wondering, is there anything that we can do without making a scene to retract this award? The truth is that I have never considered myself a peacemaker. And by the same token, I have never set out to be a troublemaker. What I've tried to do, however, is to follow the example of people I've admired throughout my life. Members of my family, teachers, ministers, friends, and other people who have influenced my behavior, not so much by what they said, but what they did. My dad was a wonderful role model. Back in the 1950s, he was fired from the bank job he had because he blew the whistle on a bank executive for unethical and illegal practices. And the Moeser household really took a hit financially. My brother, who is 4 years older and was probably about 10 at the time, loaded our little wagon with bottles and newspapers, whatever it was. James doesn't recall, but he then went door to door trying to sell whatever he had to neighbors. Another example was Dr. Albert Wynn, the former pastor at Second Presbyterian Church in downtown Richmond, who was later elected to the highest office in the Presbyterian Church USA. Years earlier, he was teaching at Stillman College, a historically black college in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. He preached in both white and black churches until the Brown decision, which he publicly supported, and learned that he was no longer welcome to preach in white churches. He continued to challenge the evils of racism and soon caught the attention of the Klan and received threats from the Klan's Grand Dragon. He feared for the safety of his family, but the police and the FBI provided no protection since they also included members of the Klan. I'll never retreat. Continue to preach an inclusive gospel despite the dangers. After 7 years, the president of Stillman College retired, and Al would have been selected as his successor. were it not for Al's strong belief that Stillman should be led by an African-American president. Others in my life did what it was right when it was dangerous to do so. And again, I want to refer to Ed Peoples. He risks his life by going every day to Prince Edward County to work in a special recreational and educational program for black children who had been locked out of their schools. He was threatened with his life. At night, when he returned to Richmond, there were occasions when he was closely followed by a car. Ed strongly suspected who they were. What I have learned is that the truth can be dangerous, but it is the foundation for peace. We have examples throughout history and many examples today of nations and communities that have buried the truth in an effort to maintain calm. Whatever calm might appear on the surface, however, hides the anger that festers underneath. It's not long before the calm is shattered. What happens is what we witness across the world today. It's what we witness in Baltimore. It's what we can witness in any city, including Richmond. What was remarkable about the revolution in South Africa was how it occurred without the massive bloodshed that many had predicted. Nelson Mandela and Bishop Desmond Tutu led a peace process based on truth and reconciliation. Public hearings were convened. Those who committed atrocities, whether in support of apartheid or in opposition, were considered for amnesty if they appeared before those whom they had oppressed and then told the truth about what they had done. Speaking before a November 2013 international conference in New York, former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan said that, and I quote, "Truth-seeking is not just about individual responsibility. It is about society, about the state, and its institutions. Any reform," he noticed, "is achieved once people learn about the past and then build a community committed to never repeating the past." Others must judge whether my attempts over the years to write and speak honestly about metropolitan Richmond have led to anything positive or simply angered people who sit in high places. Yet I owe it to so many others to keep the faith, tell the truth as best I can, and keep going. I'm not much of a peacemaker, but I'm honored to accept this award on behalf of those who taught me to be honest and tell the truth. Live by it as best you can, and don't let those who hide the truth deter you. To my dad, to my wife, Sharon, Al Wynn, Ed Peoples, and I see so many of you in this audience. Thank you. I'm deeply touched by this award, and that's the truth.